Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Illosophy. Today we're going to be talking about the Tabernacle of Moses, and was it a space tent? What do I mean by that? Well, with the help of two books that I've read recently, I'm going to try to help lay out my claim. The first book that I'd like to read from was written by Reverend Robert Taylor. It is called The Devil's Pulpit, and let's begin. Priests were philosophers and astronomers. The Druids, Egyptians, Persians, and Indians all worshipped God as fire or the sun. The sun assumed every garb according to which constellational season. So the lion in the midsummer was Leo, the ox in the spring was Taurus, and it became the Lamb of God when the sun passed the equator in Aries. It also became the scorpion in the fall when descending, then became man in the sign of Aquarius. 4,000 years ago, it was the age of Taurus. Every spring equinox, the bull was on the equator. And to me, this kind of reminded me of the story when Moses came down the mountain and the children of Israel were worshiping the golden calf. It was almost like Moses tried to shame them as if they were still in the age before. He was trying to bring them to the new age and they were still stuck in the age of Taurus, which kind of almost reminded me of the quote, "And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and was mighty in words and in deeds." What was this wisdom of the Egyptians? In my opinion, I believe that astronomy was kept secret from the slaves of the day, and Moses, being learned of the Egyptians, decided to shed some light on these people. And during this age of Taurus, it was the period when the bull, the lion, the scorpion or eagle, and the man mark the visions of the year, which coincides with Ezekiel's vision of the cherubim that had 4 faces each, of a bull, a lion, or an eagle, and a man. 2,500 years ago, the sun began in Aries, and this being the sign of the goat, Moses was the shepherd. He was shepherding these people out of the age of Taurus, and the golden calf was nothing more than a symbol of Taurus. October is considered the gates of hell. That's when the sun dips beneath the equator. And that also reminds me of a lot of Hispanic culture, how they have the Day of the Dead, and that the veil thins during that time of the year. The constellation of the Virgin has nearly invisible stars for its head. Pagan sculptors made their Venus with small head, like the Venus fertility dolls that have the giant tits and ass and a small head. The letters IHS on the cross really was just the full name of the pagan god Bacchus, the god of wine. The Magi were followers of astronomy. They veiled it in allegory and worshipped Zoroaster. Magia, or magic, was originally the name of the science of astronomy. The 3 Magi were Orion's belt stars, who looked across the horizon at Vendimeatrix, which is a star in the east in the constellation of Virgo. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh are emblems of the sun. John the Baptist Festival Day is June 24th, when the days continue to grow shorter. As in the quote, "He must increase while I must decrease." John the Baptist decreased until August 29th, when he gets his head cut off by the horizon. And that was from Reverend Robert Taylor. The next book that gave me some mind-blowing epiphanies is called The Astronomy of the Bible by E. Walter Maunder. And he starts, "The School of Alexandria was astronomy's headquarters. The books of the Old Testament were written at different times of early astronomy." And he quotes, "It is the moon that has powers over the great world of waters, whose pulse beats in some kind of mysterious obedience to her will. The sun marks the days, the phases of the moon marks the months, and the sun plus the stars equal the seasons." And this reminded me of the Lakota tribe. If you listen to the last episode, I spoke about how I've been attending these sweat lodges with the Lakota tribe. And the last time I was there, they actually told me about their lunar calendar, and how they used to use a turtle shell for a calendar, because in the middle of turtles' shells there are 13 bigger designs, and around the edge of the turtle shell there's usually 27 to 29 little designs that mark the days, whereas the 13 spots mark the months. Isaiah speaks of stellar universe as tent of Jehovah. And speaking of the Lakota sweat lodge, the Tabernacle of Moses really does remind me of a sweat lodge. And as I called it, a space tent. If you look inside, some of the items that were inside the tabernacle were the 7 candles, which could be related to the Little Dipper, and then the table of the 12 showbreads, which you could relate to the constellation Virgo. And I would almost like to say that the Holy of Holies could be like the throne of Cassiopeia. Just all these circumpolar constellations were shown priority in this Egyptian wisdom. Heathens worshipped stars as spiritual beings. The ideogram for a god was an 8-rayed star. And again, back to the sweat lodge. When I last was there, they told me that the construction of the sweat lodge is composed of 16 rods, which represent the 16 great mysteries of the Lakota creation story. And in the middle of the circle that makes up these 16 rods, it forms an 8-rayed star. And this is a symbol that permeates through almost every culture and religion. Sun worship was so popular that Kings Asa and Josiah had to take away sun images. Traveling was safer during full moonlit nights. Spring and autumnal festivals of Jews were held on full moons. Isaiah describes the Lord as he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, that stretcheth out the heavens as a curtain, and spreadeth them out as a tent to dwell in. Again, a tent. The tabernacle of Moses was a space tent. And what does he mean that he stretcheth out the heavens as a curtain and spreadeth them out as a tent to dwell in? The globe has 24 sidereal hours, or 24 cords that stretch out from pole to pole. Quote, "But you have borne the tabernacle of your Moloch and Chion, your images, the star of your God, which you made to yourselves." Maunder believes this to be a misreading of the Septuagint that should use the word Kaivan, K-A-I-V-A-N, which is Saturn's ancient name. The Star of David or the Star of Remphan could be the same thing in my opinion. Maunder also argues that constellations cannot be older than 5,000 years old because there was much unmapped space in the south free of constellations. The few southern constellations during the time of Genesis was the ship, above that a raven perched on a reptile, then a centaur that appears to be exiting the ship, offering up an animal, a wolf, on the altar constellation, and the Milky Way could be seen as smoke from the altar, and inside the Milky Way, Sagittarius's bow, which relates to the passage, "I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a token of a covenant between me and the earth." And the stream of water from the deluge could come from Aquarius. The Talmud connects the Pleiades to the flood by this quote, "When the Holy One, blessed be He, wished to bring the deluge upon the world, He took 2 stars out of the Pleiades, and thus let the deluge loose. And when He wished to arrest it, He took 2 stars out of Arcturus and stopped it." A week of 7 days, or 7 3/8 days, of a month, 29.5 days, is closest to a quarter of the month as you can get. The triad of stars seen on Babylonian reliefs became known to represent Sin, Shamash, and Ishtar, or the moon, sun, and Venus. And I know you've all seen this sign places. They are the 3 brightest luminaries. This gave them the sidereal year. Venus's behavior was calculated against solar and lunar cycle, and Venus is usefully matchable to 1/2 of the sun's journey through any one sign. Venus acts as a second hand to the minute hand of the sun. If we check how far around the watch face the second hand has reached, we know how much of the minute remains. So this triad of the moon, sun, and Venus was used to calculate. Well, that's about all for this episode of Philosophy. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Do you think the Tabernacle of Moses was a space tent?